Those of you who got useless college degrees, how's it going? I have a degree in creative writing. Everyone except my parents told me this was a bad idea, but they were wrong. After college, I moved to a major tech hub and wrote marketing copy for a decade. I found that those interviewing me were impressed by my degree and were enthusiastic to hire someone who could just write. After the company I was working for was acquired by a bigger company, I decided to take the money and some time off. I just published my first novel. I'd say my useless degree has worked out pretty well. Since people are asking, my novel is called Accomplishments and Accomplices. It's a fun historical comedy with a sparkle of romance, perfect for laughing at in the bathtub. It's available on Amazon right now. I guess the real accomplice was that degree after all, huh? Story 2. In college, I was briefly a comparative literature major. My dad lost his mind and went on big rants about how useless that degree was, so I gave in and changed my major. As a middle-aged adult, I now work in translation and localization, and many of the higher-level jobs I'd like to move into require a comparative literature degree, which I now don't have. I guess I'm screwed. I wish my parents had known me well enough to trust that when I said I knew what I liked doing and where I wanted to go, I meant it. Story 3. I have degrees in both acting and philosophy. I spent a decade and a half working odd jobs and taking acting gigs, including commercials, stage, and film. I also wrote my own material, which I think my philosophy studies made me better at. Aside from ending sentences with prepositions, I've made some improvements in my writing. I made mostly low and inconsistent money, but survived and had a lot of fun. I recently earned a master's degree in mental health counseling, got my associate's license, and started at a nice private practice this week. With a baby on the way, life is good. In my case, following my passions worked out in the ways I wanted it to, and over time I grew into or out of the things I needed to. I gained skills through those majors that I still use today, even if their economic purpose was not immediately obvious at the time. I think education has its own value, and that it's okay to give people the space to have less clear career journeys, even if it seems risky. Story 4. Animation, industrial design, graphic design, media and communications, and journalism with a minor in diplomacy and foreign policy. The last 3 are federally backed and come from network universities, so I'm doing well in the field with those accreditations. The first 3 are a joke and a waste of time and money. I spent 10 years trying to break into creative fields, working for MTV, Disney, industrial manufacturing, book publishing, and advertising. The Johnny Walker brand was my favorite. I was always paid terribly, undervalued, threatened with replacement, and had to compete with everyone. Nobody cared about my education, just how good, fast, and cheap I could be at printing money for them with my efforts. Nowadays, I spend my time writing policy proposals that are seen as high as the White House, working out complex national problems with like-minded people. For once in my life, I feel valued and validated. Story 5. I have a degree in history with a minor in math, combinatorics, and social psychology. I currently work in tech sales and make a mid-six-figure salary. I'm doing just fine, thank you. My advice is to take courses you enjoy and that help you learn. Carry that growth mindset forward. There is nothing worse than spending time, energy, and resources on a quote-unquote useful degree, only to find you hate the job once you start. There is money to be made no matter what you pursue. With generative AI, supposedly useless degrees like communications, history, English, philosophy, and psychology are all becoming more important and necessary than pure STEM or computer science pursuits. Story 6. I got a bachelor's degree in computer science. It took me 3 years to get a job in the field, and even then it wasn't because of the degree. It was because I went in as a warehouse worker, and the boss said, "How the heck is someone as smart as you working in a warehouse? Let me move you to the software developer team." But since they saw I was working at $12 an hour and probably figured out I was desperate, the software team gave me a very, very low salary. After 3 years, I quit and began to look for a job that pays better, aiming for around $80,000. I haven't found a job since I quit in November. Story 7. I got a degree in political science. I work in retail and have never used my degree. This reminds me of a joke. A young woman graduates from college with an art history degree. Her parents are very proud and take her out to dinner at a nice restaurant to celebrate. The waiter sees the celebratory atmosphere and asks, "What's the occasion?" The parents respond, "Our brilliant daughter just graduated from college." The waiter says, "Oh, that's great. Congrats. What did you get a degree in?" The girl says, "Art history." The waiter replies, "Hey, me too. I have the same degree. Anyway, can I take your order?" Story 8. I got a bachelor's degree in history to become a high school history teacher. Subbing during my undergraduate studies taught me I didn't want to do that. I then decided to become a history professor and got a master's degree in history. Grad school and the shrinking humanities departments in academia taught me I didn't want to do that either. I also worked for AmeriCorps during grad school. Anyway, it turned out that I could read, write, and research better than most people, and I love video games, so I became a freelance gaming news writer on a website with my credentials. I did that for 5 months and then became a freelance writer and weekend editor at another smaller gaming site for more pay. I was promoted to associate editor there in 6 months, then managing editor 6 months after that. I did that for a couple of years, but was laid off in January. With the industry in decline and AI ruining traditional search and SEO, it was for the best. I had already been applying to jobs before I was laid off, and I interviewed for and got a job that week after. Now I'm a technical writer for the state. It was an interesting and roundabout route, but you shouldn't underestimate the value of being able to read and write well. Story 9. I double majored in creative writing and journalism and now work in marketing, managing social media for a tech company. I'm very happy. I'm by no means rich, but compared to the small town I grew up in and got away from, I feel like I am living the life. My salary keeps me comfortable enough to own a car I love, take my wife out to some nice dinners, and have some cushion in the bank. I work from home full time and only wear pants when I want to. It wasn't always easy. I had a number of terrible jobs before I quote unquote made it. I'm also pretty thankful for what my degree choices did for me in terms of media literacy, which I'm finding more and more important with each US election cycle. Story 10. I got a political science degree because I wanted to go to law school, but then I talked to some lawyers who were literally like, don't do it. While my major isn't related to my current job, having a degree definitely gives you an edge over someone who doesn't. I'm also really good at writing, analysis, and research, which are important skills for this kind of work. I was in retail hell for a while, but I finally got my foot in the door as something better, then got promoted, and then got promoted again. Now I work from home and really only put in about 4 hours of work a day, and haven't set foot in an office in 18 months. If you had asked me 5 years ago if my degree was worth it, I would have said absolutely not, but things really turned around for me after 2020. Story 11. I got a BFA in General Fine Arts, which I call generally messing around. Since art is all I can really do, there was no alternative. Years later, at 46, I found out I have severe ADHD. It now makes sense how I completely procrastinated and messed around my whole life with no concentration and constantly getting fired. I'm now trying again to do something art related. I'm on medication, but I'm still having a lot of trouble with my impulse control. Getting myself to do what I need to do for my art business is next to impossible, especially right now, since my new obsession is Ableton. I'm always getting bored with my art series, so I switch up my art style and can't get anything done. The list goes on, and it's really hard to make any headway. I also work in a warehouse, hating every minute of it, which really sucks. Story 12. I was a film major who landed a good internship that launched me into film production. Things were going pretty well for like 12 years or so, and then the entire industry collapsed over the past 3 or 4 years. No one knows if or how it will be able to rebound. Streaming, potential AI, and media conglomerates obsessed with quarterly growth for shareholders seem to be the problem. It's a shame. I had actually found something I love doing and was good at. It seems now I will likely have to start all over in a new career in my 40s. Of all the careers I thought would dry up, I never suspected it would be the film industry. I suppose you should never doubt the limits of corporate greed. Story 13. I have 2 useless degrees, a BA in history and a BA in political science. Everyone thought I was wasting my time because I changed my major from business and accounting. I ended up being one of the most successful people in my family and among my friends, even more successful than my uncle, who thought he was hot stuff as a small business owner and slumlord. My wife put him in his place once when he kept trying to mock me at a family gathering. I am now the founder and CEO of a private academy for English education in South Korea. Life can be hard, but it's going well. My wife and I started from nothing, did a lot of research and development in the field, and are now quite well known in our industry for our unorthodox methodology. We got a book published, we were interviewed by a magazine, and a few TV networks also took an interest in us. We do a lot of charity work too. It's been a good ride. It was rough at times, but we are doing fine. I forgot to mention my older brother who has a BA in English and journalism. He ended up with a successful career in fashion and the movie industry and now holds a high position at Netflix. He's worked with many famous people in his time. Everyone in our family didn't believe in him either. Story 14. If you find any video online asking about the easiest major, it's never underwater, lesbian, basket weaving, or whatever else anti-college people say to demean non-STEM majors. It's almost always communications. It turns out that several jobs that want a communications degree pay extremely well. I'm currently a proposal manager and am interviewing for jobs right now. I got laid off recently that all pay over $100,000. Most recently, I was making $130,000 as a PM. I've seen proposal manager jobs at companies like Accenture, Microsoft, Deloitte, Amazon, and Google that top out at over $200,000. That's as an individual contributor, not in people management. This means I can work a regular grunt-level 9-to-5 job and eventually make over $200,000. The ceiling is obviously higher if I become a team manager, director, or so on. So I'm doing pretty well right now, career-wise. The layoff is a setback, but the market rate for my job is very lucrative. I never thought I would even get close to these kinds of salaries, let alone in my 30s instead of near retirement. Story 15. I have a BA in political science and also suckered myself into an MIS degree. As a millennial, I literally feel everything is a scam. For every quality product or service, there are heaps of absolute garbage being marketed, and there's a paywall after paywall for everything. Now, food is the most expensive it has ever been. Housing is the most expensive it has ever been. Medical care isn't guaranteed. Childcare isn't guaranteed, and guns are the single greatest threat to school aged children. The population is falling off a cliff, and the environment is either ruined or almost ruined beyond repair. I grew up in a conservative family that desperately tried to teach me that capitalism is the shining beacon of economic freedom and prosperity. I'm not saying it's the worst system, but I'm also not going to lie to myself and convince myself this is the best mankind can do. I don't even think we're close. Anyway, yeah, my college degrees are meh. Story 16. I got a Bachelor of Science in Communication. My parents were of the mindset, very well meaning at the time and a bit more accurate 20 years ago, to quote, just go to college, get any degree, get a good job, and boom, adulthood. I graduated in 2009 in the middle of the big financial recession. Did it open the door to jobs that, for whatever reason, required or wanted a degree? Sure, I guess. I went through a 5-year period of a revolving door of jobs, partly due to my own naivete and partly because I worked for a couple of crappy, toxic employers. Not a single one of them actually required me to use my degree. However, I've gotten really good at writing things like process documents, procedures, and how-tos, so I guess I technically used the degree. In 2015, I fell upward into an accounting job, although the last 9+ years have been really turbulent for a lot of personal and professional reasons. I've managed to hold reasonably solid employment for the majority of that time in financial and accounting related fields and roles. In October 2019, I decided to get an MBA with an accounting concentration. It was a great call doing a graduate degree during a lockdown. However, when I got hired for the job I have now, I was told that the master's degree could be helpful if I ever wanted to be in management with them later, so there's that. I don't really know how to feel about it. I'm doing okay, I guess, and what I do now is a lot more related to the MBA than the BS, I guess. Story 17. I got a degree in philosophy. I hate academia and teaching pays terribly, so I didn't think there was anything else I could use it for. A few years back, I got into coding via Arduino, and that's what I do for a living. I'm doing well. For a few years, I worked really crappy jobs, struggled to make ends meet, and was almost evicted once. Had I studied something like software engineering, getting to where I am would have been a lot easier. However, I don't regret it. Going to school for something kind of useless in this job market made me who I am. I'm even, slowly, working toward a degree in creative writing. Story 18. One of the best hires I ever made was a guy who majored in philosophy with a specialization in deductive logic. It was pretty obvious that he was going to be able to conquer coding in a very short amount of time. What stood out about him was in his interview when he described managing a guild in some video game, maybe World of Warcraft, I don't know, I'm not a gamer. He explained in such granular detail how challenging it was to manage more than 10 people of all different backgrounds and ages, who often had very different agendas or really challenging attitudes, and to corral them toward one goal. As expected, he picked up VBA in no time, and on the trading floor, he managed to keep his cool with some very short-tempered Napoleon complex schmucks. He was the best hire ever. Wherever you are, Damien, I know you're crushing life, and I hope you're well. Story 19. I work in software support and have been doing tech-related work since about 2012. For most of my career, I kept my mouth shut about my master's degree in philosophy. Only the events of 2016 and especially 2020 made me feel my subject matter was more important to talk about. I seriously wish I'd just bitten the bullet on that when I was younger, that bullet being the understanding that there's no such thing as a dream job. The best you can hope for is the job is not unethical and I enjoy it. Sometimes, more importantly, it gives me lots of money. I could have just gone into medicine or gone into software development much sooner, but yeah, hindsight is hindsight. Story 20. I went back to school at 27 and graduated at 32 with 2 bachelor's degrees, a Bachelor of Science in Psychology and a Bachelor of Arts in Religious Studies, with a concentration in Mahayana and Vajrayana Buddhism. One was for work and the other was for personal enrichment and fun. 3 years after graduation, I worked with a state agency specializing in NGRI, not guilty by reason of insanity, mental health case management, collaborating with public agencies and the courts. Additionally, I work 2 days a month as a counselor and meditation teacher at a crisis center. This is mainly for fun, but the extra money is nice. My current salary, including my part-time work, is around $90,000, so the old saying, psychology is useless, has not been true in my case. Story 21. Hello, this thread is an excellent example of what we call survivorship bias. For those not familiar, this is a logical bias of focusing on entities that passed a selection process while ignoring those who did not. Are there people who were successful after getting a useless degree? Of course. Are the people who got a useless degree and failed horribly posting in this thread? Mostly no. They may not have internet access or the time to post on Reddit. Furthermore, as humans, we emphasize our successes while minimizing our failures. The people who were not successful won't be as interested in posting their story. Take this thread with a grain of salt. I knew I should have gotten a degree in survivorship. Story 22. When I was 18 and thinking about college, my parents told me not to worry about choosing a quote-unquote career path degree. They emphasized the overall process of education, which involves more than just job training. and stressed that any degree will teach you valuable things that can be applied to any career, such as time management, collaboration, and how to find the right information. But more than that, and above all, it will teach you how to think, to reason, and to evaluate. So I studied English, language, and literature simply because I enjoyed it. Then I left college and started working in IT, first in a desktop support role, then as a systems administrator, then as a higher level engineer, and now as a systems architect. It's all worked out pretty well, plus I can write documentation and reports a hell of a lot better than my peers can. Story 23. I have a degree in political science from a top 30 college. I spent 2 years working as support staff in a large law firm, doing legal assistant work while deciding if I wanted to go to law school. I went back and got a master's degree in education, having never taken a single education class in undergrad. I became a special education teacher at an NYC public school. I am now an assistant principal, managing a department of 25 history teachers, both special education and general education, at a high-need NYC public high school. I love my job. My college helped me build the critical thinking, reading, and writing skills I use every day and will continue to use as I move ahead in my career. I'm 35, I work for the largest school district in America, I get paid well for an educator, and the room for growth is unlimited. People often point out that I, quote, became a teacher after attending a really expensive, competitive school, and that I could have gone to a less expensive college. I have zero regrets about studying political science or choosing to attend the college that I did. The education I received has set me up for life. Story 24. I double majored in anthropology and geography with a minor in Chinese studies. I graduated in 2010, so there was absolutely no work at the university. I got a retail job to pay rent, but in 2011, I broke my right hand and things spiraled down from there. After nearly dying of alcoholism, I've been working at a UPS store for about 3 years now and just became a notary in California. It's a silly job that I'm crazy overqualified for, but my boss loves me and treats me like family. The folks in this town really appreciate what we do. I'm happy but not content because everyone expected more from me. Story 25. According to many, a biology degree was useless unless I wanted to go to med school. In the famous words of my ex's best friend, the only person he knew who was employed with a biology degree was a milk delivery driver. I got my degree in evolutionary biology and ecology in 2019. A couple of months later, I got a job working at a medical lab. I worked in various labs for a few years, gained a lot of hard skills, and now I'm working as a chemist for a water treatment plant. I get to work with scientists around the facility, do field work, and run a bunch of machines. I even do some software development work. I'll be bringing in over $75,000 this year with overtime and bonuses. For anyone with a useless biology degree, you don't need a master's or even a certification like a medical laboratory scientist, MLS. It takes a while to get a decent paying lab job, but there's a good job security once you get some experience, and an experienced lab tech can get a new job in under a month pretty reliably. And if you're enjoying the video, learning a thing or two from these stories, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 26. My degree, as it was presented, was in online coordination. I don't know what that is, but my first tech job in 1997 called me an online coordinator. Sadly, I never completed the credits required to be an online coordinator, but did become a senior engineer within a few paychecks thanks to actually knowing what I was talking about and having a father who also knew what he was talking about when I asked the important questions. Now, almost 30 years later, I'll explain tech to anyone who asks, learn Python and JavaScript thoroughly, and you'll be all set for tomorrow. Everyone else will look up to you. If you really want to upstage those who know, be good at Rust. If you want to work in the shadows, learn Linux, Bash scripting, and Perl. You won't get rich, but you'll perform miracles. Story 27. My degree wasn't useless. It was a Bachelor's of Arts in Geography with an emphasis on natural resources and environmental management, as well as a minor in geology. However, I initially left school before graduating. In the intervening years, my university ran into some pretty well-publicized financial troubles, and they had to cut over 100 degree programs, mine being one of them. I found all of this out when I decided to finally finish my degree this past summer. Instead, I'm doing something called a Regents Bachelor of Arts. My major in geography is now a minor. I've been told that the RBA is a legitimate degree specifically designed for people who pause their education for whatever reason. Apparently, a lot of military personnel and athletes who left school early and decided to go back later to finish their degrees do the same thing. I'm also getting a GIS certificate from another university, so hopefully between the two, I can qualify for something, or I can just keep working in transportation. Either way, it's fine with me. Story 28. I have a Bachelor of Arts in Performance Theater, acting. After having fun for about 30 years doing regional theater, the occasional commercial, conflict resolution for children, and corporate training using actors, I retired and used my degree to get a job in a city library system. I bought a house in Los Angeles 2 years ago in this market. I'm also in close contact with an Oscar-winning classmate and a couple of Tony-winning types I've crossed paths with over time. I'm awaiting a contact for 3 of the novels I wrote in my spare time because my quote-unquote useless writing teacher in college won the Pulitzer Prize and I listened to him. I'd say I don't regret anything. From the stage to the stacks, wow, what a plot twist. Story 29. I have a degree in medieval studies and topped out as a corporate trainer in healthcare settings. I was doing pretty well until I had to leave the workforce to care for my autistic child. Every employer would ask, so, what do you do with a degree like this? My response? You ever have to tell a physician in writing that they messed up a mandatory training deadline and you have to pull them off their rounds? Well, there's a right way to do that and a wrong way. Surprisingly, my background in linguistics and medieval poetry taught me how to do it the right way. Story 30. I went back to school and got a different degree in something else I was interested in and now have a good career in that field. On the one hand, I really could have done without the student debt from the first degree, but on the other hand, I was in no fit state to be making plans for my future when I first went to college. I had a bunch of physical and mental health issues that I needed to fix before I was fit to be doing anything, so in a way, the first degree bought me time to identify those issues. On the whole, I would recommend against getting a useless degree unless you have a plan for afterward that can accommodate it. Story 31. I don't think what the degree is in is the point. The point is that you wanted a degree, chose a major, and stuck with something that's not always easy. You had to force yourself to do things for it, all while paying or highly financing the experience just for the quote-unquote luxury of getting a piece of paper. It's to prove that you have the ability to learn and follow through with delayed gratification for the betterment of yourself, and hopefully you learn to help others along the way. Then you're fit for the corporate world, and if you're lucky, you can be a free thinker. Sometimes a degree is also used as a networking center to gather name-dropping abilities and for show because some people don't actually apply themselves. They just pay for the class and scrape by. It depends. Use it wisely. Also, what is your definition of wise? Story 32. I'll do you one better. How about having a useful degree and then not having a job in it? Someone I thought was one of my closest friends unintentionally expressed how judgmental they are of me for not working in tech, even though that's what my degree is in. They have no idea that I spent the last couple of years going back to school to further my education, participating in several job programs, and gaining more certifications than when I graduated. Of course, I'm picking up other jobs in the meantime. Meanwhile, he went to nursing or medical school for years and spends his time working in hospitals and traveling with his girlfriend. Story 33. I got my BS in anthropology, cue the eye rolls, and better get good at slinging coffee jokes. The thing with an anthropology degree is that you absolutely need to know exactly what you plan to do with it and figure it out by your fourth semester at the latest. I was able to enroll in an archaeological field school and earn college credits while getting the real job training that I needed. I enrolled in archaeological theory and field methods classes, and while my focus was on archaeology, I still needed a well-rounded understanding of linguistics, cultural theory, and bioanthropology. I did a GIS assistantship with one of my professors in my 7th semester and took an Intro to GIS course in my final semester. I'm now a year and a half into my career as a cultural resource management field archaeologist, and I love it with every fiber of my being. I was offered my first field tech job a month before I graduated and have since gone on to work for many different companies, from micro consulting offices to major industry names like SWCA and Search. What no one outside of the industry knows is that we are hurting for people at all levels, from field archaeologists to lab techs and even crew chiefs, principal investigators, and project managers. There's an 8,000 plus personnel shortage in the US alone at all levels. The pay is terrible and we aren't respected like the college-educated professionals we all are, but a few of us, myself included, are pushing for unionization and advocating for better pay. My field office is set to become one of the first 3 in the US to successfully unionize. We're just waiting for our contract to be negotiated and signed. It's also a physically taxing job, and if you do full-time travel work like I do, it can be mentally draining. I'm in my mid to late 20s and already have neuropathy in both hands and carpal tunnel in my right hand. Almost every archaeologist I've worked with has some nerve or joint pain in their hands. I have a prescription for a substance-derived muscle salve that helps block the pain in my hands, but it's nothing more than a Band-Aid. Some days I wake up and can't move my right hand or flex my fingers at all without being in excruciating pain. I can't even open spaghetti sauce jars anymore without one of those tension-based jar openers. But I love what I do. I'd much rather have hand pain if it means I get to work outside every day versus losing my mind in an office with air conditioning and artificial lighting. I'm starting my master's program in January. Story 34. I got my master's degree in exercise physiology. I was in a program meant to lead to a PhD, but I didn't finish it. The master's degree was strictly meant to lead to a research-oriented career, and there really aren't many jobs for researchers without a PhD. I looked into a job that did use my degree, but sadly the MD who headed that department and hired me as a research assistant moved out of town. I didn't get another job and ended up working in many different fields after that, including as a carpenter's assistant, house painter, tiler, electrician's helper, post office, contract worker, and eventually a real estate assistant. I wasn't what I would call a go getter, so this was completely my lack of initiative. Once a few years had gone by with me being out of the field, it was impossible to get hired for anything that used my degree. I don't really regret getting an education, I just regret wasting it. Story 35. I have a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Illustration, which also included animation and graphic design coursework. After graduation, I never got a chance to enter the animation or games industry as a creative, so I floated through years of underpaid freelance work and unrelated day jobs. I currently work in marketing for a cannabis company. It's a chill work environment, but 2 years into the role, I feel unfulfilled making the same graphics over and over. My state's job seeker agency calculated that graphic designers are not in demand for hiring statewide, so they funded a cybersecurity certificate for me. I'll be done in December. I'm not sure what I'll do after that, as the tech industry, including computer science, is still a mess for hiring. I don't really have any other passions aside from working on concepts for an indie game, but my developer friends have warned me that it might take years to get anything out. I went to PAX West in Seattle over Labor Day weekend. While it was inspiring, I also noticed that a lot of game developers are nervous about what the market will do next. Story 36. I got a Bachelor of Fine Arts with a focus on digital art as the only person in the department with that specialty. After that, I got a Master's in Game Development with a focus on animation. I worked as a motion capture animator in games for 5 years. It was extremely unstable. My longest position lasted only 11 months before the company laid off half their employees and shut down completely 2 months later. I did a lot of freelance and contract work for a couple of years before deciding the job was unfulfilling and not what I wanted. I still don't know what fulfilling work would be, but part of the problem is the depression, ADHD, and anxiety issues I need to work through. That, more than anything else, has been the source of my career problems. I try to get programming jobs, but mostly work random jobs for years. Now I'm a contractor at a cereal factory, and the physical nature of the job is a huge relief. The most fulfilling work is the art I do in my spare time. I think I finally feel like a competent enough painter that art can be a real part of my income, and I've got plans to start a comic series. Story 37. I studied philosophy as an undergraduate and graduate student, and I'm living a great life. I spent the last 20 years working as a programmer and earning about the same as if I'd gone to school for computer science. Along the way, I've worked with people who have had degrees in linguistics, geography, 18th century literature, history, and more. Honestly, I think that people talking about degrees as being worthless either haven't had the breadth of life or work experience that have seen how people develop careers across their lives, or else their judgment of quote unquote worth is part of a larger political or culture war agenda. Story 38. I have an English degree. I worked for years in technical writing, then moved to self publishing romance novels. I made enough from that to travel a lot, and even after I stopped writing, the royalties meant I didn't need to find another job for about 4 years. I decided to become a chef instead and worked my way up. I'm now doing exactly what I want to be doing, and I'm still collecting royalties on things I wrote over 10 years ago. Both my degree and my experience have come in handy as a chef because very few people in this industry have a background in writing. So when stuff comes up that requires that skill set, I can do it better than anyone else, whether it's writing job postings to fill positions or blurbs for local advertising. Story 39. I have a bachelor's degree in graphic design along with associate degrees in web design, information systems, and marketing. The jobs I wanted in design-related fields were mostly part-time with very few full-time positions. They also didn't pay very much. If I was lucky, I could get a full-time job paying $20 an hour, which would only be $41,000 a year. So I worked 3 part-time jobs and was earning only about $30,000 to $40,000 a year. When I lost one of the jobs, I came across a position at the post office as a clerk and jumped on it. I went from juggling 3 part-time design jobs to suddenly supporting myself on just 1 part-time job at the post office. I only work 30 to 35 hours a week and earn $50,000 a year. I haven't been motivated to search for more design jobs because I have yet to find one that pays over $50,000 a year. I would have to pay more than $60,000 to convince me to give up 10 more hours a week. Story 40. I got a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Film and Television with a focus on new media, which is graphic arts for film. This got me in the door at an engineering firm with no experience in SolidWorks, their 3D software, as a technician service employee. I basically wired electrical panels and learned as I went. It didn't hurt that the reason I was hired was not based on existing knowledge, but on my ability to prove to the leadership that in this day and age, knowledge is at your fingertips if you have the reasoning to figure out what could work or what could improve something. While learning SolidWorks, I also used DraftSight to make electrical schematics. I'm now the electrical project lead for a corporation with an annual revenue of about $750 million. This is all with the same company. I joined when we were very small, and our company developed some state-of-the-art technology that became very popular in the field of biopharmaceutical research and development. Story 41. I've been a carpenter for 20 years. I went to university and got a bachelor's degree in history. While my degree has nothing to do with my occupation, that time dedicated to learning all sorts of subjects has acted as a springboard for many other interests and shaped my thought process in every way imaginable. There isn't anything I come across in my daily life that I don't use some of the critical thinking skills I learned in college for. Could I have made a lot more money just going into carpentry right away? Sure, but would I be the well rounded, inquisitive, and curious person I am today without the tools that going to college helped sharpen? No. Story 42. I don't know if I would call my degree useless. One is in music, another is in journalism, and another is in filmmaking. Music was just for fun. I've been a writer for 30 years, so there's not much I haven't done. Before getting my journalism degree, I worked in the printing department at the local paper. I pursued filmmaking because I was bored, and since I had already partly made a living in still photography, I figured why not make some movies and try something new? So I did. I currently work in logistics and will be returning to school for an MBA, also in many ways just for fun. At 41, I don't see why I shouldn't learn as much as I possibly can about everything. Story 43. I have a Bible and theology degree. It would have been super useful if I had gone into some kind of professional ministry, which I did not do. And don't get me wrong, that was the right decision, but it left me without any particularly useful degree. I spent 7 years after college as a corrections officer, which only required a diploma but made reasonably good money. Since then, for 14 years, I've basically been a social worker. That is, my job is one customarily done by a social worker, but I don't have a social work license. I have a lot of experience now, but as far as education goes, I barely meet the qualifications. If it ever gets any more restrictive, I'll have to go back to school. I've considered doing it anyway, but my wife has been in college consistently for several years now, working through various nursing degrees. Her job pays much better than mine, so she gets whatever she wants in terms of education. My daughter also just started college, and even with student aid, we can't afford to have 3 of us in college at once. Story 44. I got my bachelor's degree in criminal justice, chasing a childhood dream of being a cop. In my senior year, after my dad, whom I love dearly, I realized I was partially doing it to make him proud since his dad was a beloved cop. I also realized I didn't have the personality for it and didn't think it would be a great move. I graduated in 2016. For 7 years now, I've been a Class 2 wastewater maintenance mechanic. I also operate the plant when needed. I absolutely love the job as I've always enjoyed learning a plethora of trade skills. The hours, pay, and benefits are top-notch too. I'm happy that I became a turd cop instead of an actual cop. The degree may help me down the road and I appreciate the fun I had, but screw these loan payments. Story 45. I wouldn't say my degree is useless, I just didn't use it. I got my degree in digital media, which encompassed web design, 3D rendering, and video or audio editing. I picked audio. I was in love with sound design, which is creating sound effects for movies with computers. I found it fascinating. Immediately after college, I got a job with a company that did sound design for commercials. A perfect fit, right? I knew I would have to start at the bottom and work my way up, but after 2 years of getting coffee and doing everything except anything related to audio, I quit. The job left such a bad taste in my mouth that I got a job doing something completely different. I'm now 42 and back in school getting my MBA in project management. Story 46. That's not a classic useless degree, but I botched it. I got a computer science degree and did well, but I was burnt out and wasn't up for how competitive it was to even get an internship at the time. I went back into the sciences, which I preferred. I worked in an environmental lab for 10 years, and by the end, I basically ran our entire wet chem department in all but name. It was the biggest lab in the nation at the time. I left there because of burnout and some key toxic players and their unethical decisions. I don't have proper experience to apply for computer science jobs and can't afford certifications. My lack of an applied science degree is also pushing me down the lab hire lists. I was even close to landing a coveted TVA job. Right now, I'm doing odd projects with some microcontrollers and 3D printers for a friend, and working for an Airbnb/residential cleaning company. I'm hoping a couple of local, more chilled jobs will call me back one of these days. One of the many promised jobs that have fallen through should be coming next year, R&D with a buddy for a lab. It would involve fabrication, coding, method development, hands-on experience with more in-demand instrumentation, and more. It will be exciting if it happens. Story 47. I have a Bachelor of Arts in Creative Writing in English with a minor in Professional Writing. I'm currently halfway through a Master's in Creative Writing but have dropped out for now. I plan to go back depending on the circumstances. I used to write in my spare time with the ultimate goal of becoming a published author. Prior to achieving that goal, I wanted to do anything writing or reading related, such as editing, proofreading, copying, or marketing. I love reading, writing, language, and communication. I currently work as a chemical operator in a factory. I like it. It's stressful, fast-paced, and hot as heck, especially in the summer. The pay is pretty decent. I like my coworkers and my bosses, and it's a 10-minute walk from my house. There are also only 3 other people who can do my job, one of whom is the vice president, so there's job security there. Story 48. I got a bachelor's degree in art history. It was a slap in the face when I got into the real world and 50 people were fighting over 4 positions in my state. Not only that, but people would put off retiring for as long as possible. It was pretty much only graduate school or go into another field. I became deeply depressed. I tried to go back to school because it was all I knew, and honestly, I was quite good at it, but the passion was gone. I ended up working for scraps at a local gallery, barely able to survive. I ended up getting a tattoo apprenticeship, and now, after 9 years, I'm doing super well. I own two tattoo shops and work out of one of them. Honestly, I could not be happier with my trajectory, but I never would have expected it. And if you like these stories, here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're gonna love this. I'll catch you in that video.